On July 20th, the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, traveled to space for the first time in his life. And he was determined that it wasn't the last. Jeff took his brother Mark Bezos, Ms. Wally Funk, and an 18-year-old boy, Oliver Damon, with him. His rocket ship, known as New Shepard, begins its journey from West Texas, taking 11 minutes flight into space, 351,000 feet above in the air, and then landed back in the same desert, 200 miles away from its starting point. Jeff happily expressed his feelings, mentioning that day as the best day of his life. Now, this isn't a one-time event. Jeff's company Blue Origin is setting the base for a new kind of space tourism industry. Critiques call on him wasting his money on just a cringy billionaire's space race, instead of spending this money on his employees and workers. However, this is not the only concern of his trip. The second point is even more valid and alarming as well. It's the environmental concern on sealing of humans in the planet Earth. Now, you may think, what's the link between the two? Well, it is. Currently, there are around 9,000 satellites in space. Out of these, 3,000 are dead. This means that they are just big metal structures, revolving around the Earth and the low Earth orbit. Out of the operational satellites in space, 16% are governmental satellites, while 13% are for military use. And you will be surprised to know, 54%, that is more than half of these satellites are commercial. Now, what is the risk in that? It is the risk of collision. The satellites are roaming around in the orbits at such a high speed as 8 kilometers per second. Now, what if one satellite collides with another one in this space? Keeping aside the giant-sized satellites, let's talk about the orbital debris. It refers to small tiny pieces floating in the orbits due to human intervention, which no longer serves any purpose. It can be as big as a dead satellite, or even as small as metal dust of fragmented debris. More than 27,000 of this space junk has been identified in the low Earth orbit, which is notable in size as large as a football. And there are even smaller unidentifiable pieces roaming around in these orbits. Around 500,000 space junk is in the size range of a centimeter. Reduce the size range to a millimeter and you'll observe 100 million debris floating in the orbits. Now the debris smaller than a millimeter is even greater in amount. No matter what the size, these teeny tiny pieces can pose high risks for the satellites taking flight into space. The speed of each floating particle is as high as 17,500 meters per hour. At such great velocities, these tiny particles can easily damage spacecrafts traveling through space, resulting in a wreck. Repeatedly, there are several incidents reported where the space shuttle windows were needed to replaced by new because of damage caused by some tiny high-speed dry paint flakes. One such incident has also happened in the past. A French rocket was exploded in the low Earth orbits in the 1980s. The debris of this rocket hit another French satellite a decade later in 1996, damaging it completely. In 2007, China experimented with an anti-satellite test. It tried to destroy an old abandoned weather satellite. Whether or not this experiment was useful, it resulted in additional 3,500 plus pieces of large chunks of space debris, and an untraceable amount of small debris into the space junk. Now, what about satellite collisions? Back in February 2009, an active commercial satellite Iridium-33 collided with the Russian military satellite Cosmos 2251. Both were traveling at a high speed of 11.7 kilometers per second at a height of 789 kilometers above the Earth's surface. This resulted in the addition of another 2,300 pieces of debris into the orbital space. Since more and more satellites have now being launched in orbital space, the risk is getting higher and higher. The chances of collision are getting more frequent. This will definitely add more debris into space, thus multiplying the risks of another collision. Even for the spaceships traveling outside, to the moon or any other planet, risks will get higher. As both the aircraft and the debris are traveling at a high speed of 15,700 meters per hour, the momentum will be greater, so will be its impact. So eventually, this practice will lock humans in the Earth, posing high dangers and risks for traveling in space stations and spacecraft. This can even dissuade humans from using satellite communication in the future. Now, how will the world deal with this high risk? First of all, there must be some space traffic rules that must be applied in order to reduce the chances of collision. Secondly, the exposure of space with new satellites every other day should be avoided. And lastly, we must look out for some safe techniques of how the orbital space can be cleaned from all this debris. Otherwise, it will shield our Earth, not letting us out to discover the vast universe. Isn't that too scary? If you like this video, give it thumbs up. Share it with your fellows. Subscribe to InfoSplash for more amazing content like this. Press the bell icon to stay updated with everything that we post. See you soon with another video.